Greetings, my friends. Welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast with yours truly, Dr. India White. I'm thrilled to be here with you tonight. I have a spicy episode for some of you. You know who this is. But before I get into this rock star, let me make some announcements for you guys first. First things first, the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White, it will be featured on all of my social media platforms as well as Spotify. This one will be episode 74. So make sure that you're going there to support. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for those that have been here with me in this journey since 2022. As we have talked about grit ever since I've led the TED stage. Thank you, Mark Cordone, for that. Thank you to the TED tribe for being there and being that support. So go to Spotify, check out the episodes whenever you get a chance. Next thing I wanted to remind you guys of is also checking out my social media platforms. I have a million of them, I know. Facebook is Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indie238. YouTube is India White 123. And TikTok is Dr. India White. Now, I also want to remind you to check out the website. I do have several blogs on there. There are also different resources, whether it's books or if you're wanting to find out more information on an online course, or if you're wanting to schedule me to speak or whatever, you can find all that there on the website, www.india-white.com. I also wanted to remind y'all of these upcoming events we have coming up. We have NCSM and NCTM. I'm honored to be a speaker there as well as our guest here. And scheduled to speak for Nebraska, scheduled to speak for Iowa, also Ohio, scheduled for ATM&E. We're also scheduled for Northwest Conference, guys, and South Carolina. Also the Making Math Moments Conference in November. There's also going to be, for you rock stars in October, the FAMS Conference. I'm honored to be a keynote. Thank you, FAMS, for asking me to step in there. And also at FAMT, I will be there as well with you guys. So we've got a lot going on. We are spreading the message of grit. We're closing the achievement gap together. Let's keep moving forward. Let's keep this momentum. It's great times ahead. Now, I also wanted to remind you guys of the Grit Mini Workshop and the Grassroots Workshops website. Thank you, Dr. Robert K., for this a wonderful opportunity and being an amazing part of the tribe. And with that said, I want to now also one more reminder. I do have the Grit Academy going on. If you're needing students, please come my way. Send me an email, whatever. You can be in Florida or out of state, and we will work with you. Thank you for those that are trusting us with your families. We appreciate that very much. And so with that said, guys, I'm honored to bring on this guest. So there's one thing that I have a pet peeve about. That's incompetence. When people try to blow themselves up to be more than they are or act like they have knowledge and things and they really don't. But I can say for this guest, the opposite is true. She's very competent. She's a rock star. I'm honored to do the show with her. So please welcome with me on the Let's Get Gritty podcast, Dr. Maggie McHugh, who is an amazing author. She's a speaker. She's done so much of the work of PBL. Welcome, Dr. Maggie. How are you?
Oh my gosh. Dr. India, fabulous to be with you. What an introduction.
Well, you deserve it, ma'am. So listen, I know how awesome you are, but these folks might not. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Well, I am from Wisconsin, a Wisconsin girl born and raised. I don't think I have an accent, but other people say I do. But I'm going on year 18 in education, and I have taught middle school, high school, college students. I'm currently working with college students teaching a math education. And one of my absolute loves is project-based learning. So I've been a middle school teacher for 10 years. I was able to hang out with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Absolutely love them. And do project-based learning both in the math realm, but also just personalized projects that students would create, STEM, humanities, interdisciplinary projects. And it's really been a true blessing to be able to explore project-based learning with my kiddos. those. And then I am an author. Thanks for highlighting that. May 2023, my book, Bringing Project-Based Learning to Life in the Math Classroom for K through 12 came out. And that has been just a beautiful labor of love, but something that I am looking forward to continue growing. Because I believe project-based learning is a methodology, a pedagogy that really allows our students, as we talk about grit, to, embrace their grit, grow their grit, show their grittiness, and truly all students. So that's what I'm excited to talk to you
That's
about.
awesome. And it's so funny because I was just going to ask you. So you were talking about grit, which is like my favorite word. I can go toe to toe with anybody about it, right? So how has grit impacted your work on PBL, from the research to even personally, how you've been able to internalize grit and say, you know what, I got to be gritty about this, or I'm going to get gritty and get this message out. Like, how has it impacted your work?
Yeah. Um, I think grittiness, sometimes people think of someone who's gritty, and they think of this like strong, resilient, independent person, right? And for me, that word independent always seemed to be what grittiness was about. Like, I can do it myself. I was just with my 3-year-old niece where she was taking off her soccer shin guards, and it's myself, right? And I look at her and I go, wow, man, you're going to be a strong, strong woman. But the more I think I look into grittiness, and the more that I examine my own grittiness, I think that strong, independent person who recognizes the need and help from other people, who recognizes they can become even grittier when they talk to coaches, mentors, peers, colleagues, friends, and get that feedback, and that tenacity and that rejuvenation to keep going. And so I think my gritty journey really started with this idea that, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm just gonna go, 110% all in. But then realizing that if I give 110%, maybe I'm not taking the time to stop and pause and let others in with me. And so I think part of my gritty journey, at least recently, is really how can I embrace the beautiful gift others bring to me? How can I seek
Oh, wow.
that from other people so that I can remain gritty, resilient in my desire to spread my love of project-based learning and the beautiful way project-based learning can impact our students.
That is so powerful. I love how you're so open to that, and it's not like competition. Some people will be
Yes.
very competitive, and it's so draining
Yeah.
because you can vibe them out. The vibe doesn't lie. Like, we think that we come somewhere face value, and it's like we can smile, but the vibe is talking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all y'all going to NCTM, NCSM, remember this. Because it's one thing to say let's collaborate, and then there's another thing to see how can I take from you, strip from you, steal from you, and put on a face while I'm doing it, and it's
Right.
very draining. So I think I'm very happy to hear you say that. And so speaking of that, I know we'll be doing a presentation together at NCSM, right?
Yes.
And I'm super excited about it. And we could talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about. But I want you to talk about what you're wanting the audience to get from our presentation when we present at NCTM or NCSM, excuse me.
NCSM. I know you're going to be all over both of them. So at NCSM, India and I are going to be highlighting equitable teaching practices in project-based learning. And so we're going, yeah. So we're merging these two beautiful ideas. And I think what our goals are, because we've worked really hard collaboratively, again, this beautiful gritty collaboration here. Our goals are for, I think, educators to walk away with the idea that project-based learning can create a classroom culture for students to really grow as themselves, who they are as human beings, and all that they bring to the table, all of their identity as a person, as a mathematician, and that project-based learning really sets the tone in the environment for equitable practices to be enacted, and owned, not just by the teacher, but really for that students to own and engage in their learning, in learning that is authentic and relevant to themselves. I think those are some of my key takeaways. What are you hoping people get out of our session?
So, it's one thing about project-based learning. We hear it and it seems like it's just like a cliche term of, oh, it's project-based learning, building thinking classrooms, grit, like it's like these cute little sayings.
Yeah.
But what is it? How can I bring it to life
Mhm.
in my everyday education? And how can I do it in an equitable lens, not just racially focused equity?
Right.
That's really starting to get on my nerves, to be honest, because equity is so much bigger than the lens of race. We've got to understand what it is and how we are intentionally connecting with all learners. And project-based learning is one of the best tools and the ways that you can do that. It's a wonderful resource. You can have so much fun with it. There's so much, there's a plethora of ways that you can really make it come to life. And so my hope is that people can walk out of this with not only an openness and, to a PBL approach, but to really have solutions as to how they can see the cultural relevance in these things, and how they can see how it really brings us all together. No matter what the background linguistic situation is of a learner, that magic can really happen in the classroom with this. So, and also that, as they're doing this, as they're walking away, they're like, wow, that was really cool. That they're going to also understand, I need grit to implement this.
Yes.
Because if you slack up, and you become lazy or you let it go, you're not going to necessarily get the results. Let me tell you, whenever we're in education, if we're really wanting those results, you're going to have to teach and facilitate like a teacher of the year every day. Like it requires so much energy. I mean, it's
Yes.
one thing to be all fun and stuff. Like I love like Howie Waugh, very fun, right? Very
Yep.
just those cute 10-second, 30-second videos. Thanks for making me laugh. But now that I've laughed and I've had fun, I've got these real issues to deal with, right? And I
Yes.
can't always have the laughter and fun because it's not always going to give me solutions to the real problems that we're having in the classroom, right? How to connect with students of diverse backgrounds, how to bring up the achievement gap, how to make it relevant to where students really want to learn math.
Right.
And, so it's one of those things like, how do we do this? What are our answers? And project-based learning is definitely a solution for all of us. So, thank you so much, Maggie, for sharing that with us and your journey. Now you are rocking it out in Wisconsin, and you're a professor. So talk to us about your journey and how grit has helped you get to this place in your life. We don't know your beginnings. Like, what was this all about? Like,
Yeah.
how did you get into education? What struck a nerve there? How did
Yeah.
you get into project-based learning? Talk.
So I always say education's in my blood. I'm fourth generation Wisconsin teacher. So both
Oh,
parents were
wow.
educators. My grandma on my dad's side taught, first she was in a one-room schoolhouse, got married, had kids, and she couldn't be a teacher when she got married and had kids at the time.
Oh,
And then eventually she was able to go back and taught third grade. Prior to that, a great grandmother, she taught reading and writing out of her home. And we have these
oh,
old
wow.
ledgers of her, like having reading lessons and bartering that for, 2 dozen eggs. And so we have these old ledgers, which is very cool, that there's such history in education. So I went into education, family trade in essence. But I actually have degrees in both English and math. And my first position was high school English. I love English.
Oh, wow.
I absolutely love reading and the creativity with students. And that was at a time, a beautiful, glorious time in our nation's life where there were so many teachers, it was hard to find a job. So I had a 1-year position. After that, I was, let go and just trying to find my pathway. I ended up going back to my alma mater, the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. Took a job helping out, tutoring English, tutoring math, eventually teaching, worked on my master's. And while working on my master's, I thought, you know what, I actually really want to be a professor someday. I want to be a professor in education. And I had a professor who said, I want you to get your doctorate, helped me through that pathway. I got my doctorate in curriculum and instruction with a social justice math emphasis
Oh,
in
wow.
Yeah, at New Mexico State University. It was a beautiful, really got me out of my Wisconsin roots. So, into this bilingual border culture.
So why social justice?
I did my
Wisconsin.
math.
I mean, it's
I
I
know
think
you wouldn't think it.
you
You
know
wouldn't think it.
I'm thinking
But I
more like the
started.
law. Yeah. So
I
talk to us.
I know. I started exploring social justice concepts in my master's, with my master's chair, and he's the one who kind of opened my eyes to this whole idea of reading Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Paulo Freire, and really got this
Yeah.
need to explore, this need to understand the other is sometimes what it's referred to at. Who
Yeah.
is my other? And I needed to get
Wow.
out of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Right? I needed
Wow.
to go.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
did. I went to New Mexico. I remember being in this town called Mesilla, and it ends with, Silla. I have no Spanish speaking. I took French, and I was on the phone with my mom. I said, Mom, I'm in Mesilla. And like heads turned towards me, and this sweet, sweet old lady said, honey, there's two L's at the end, so it's like Mesilla, like tortilla. I
Yeah.
had zero.
Double L's to pronounce like a Y. Yeah.
Right,
Gotta respect the language,
right.
right?
So,
That's
so
cute.
I got out of Wisconsin. This is early, like 2012. Eventually got my doctorate. But while doing my doctorate and learning about social justice, I said, you know what? I need to go back into the K-12 classroom. I need to see social justice in action. I need to implement it. I need to understand how students are conceiving of these notions. And so I also know that I needed to find a place where I could maybe push boundaries. And at the time, there was a teaching position for sixth grade to teach in a project-based learning environment. I didn't know project-based learning before that.
Yeah.
And I stepped into it. And when we taught G.R.I.T, I think like many people thought, oh, I love projects. I love putting trifold boards together. I love doing cutesy things, only to have my mind, through professional development, books, conversations, colleagues, totally blown to what project-based learning is. And then through my transformation, helping my students understand and grow what it means to engage in projects through a project-based learning lens, and then through a social justice lens.
So I'm really intrigued about the social justice lens because, and then you coming out of Wisconsin and being able to rebrand your mindset and yourself, right? I mean, you're not a bad person because you probably grew up in a very reserved, maybe, and I'm not trying to have any biases or anything, but from what I know of Wisconsin, there's not a lot of diverse population there, right? So there's
in where I'm at in a smaller town. I would say the diversity is growing. But yes, where I am at specifically, we're talking about 85 to 90% white. When I was growing up, it is growing. It's now more like 70% white. So still very white, very Christian centered, I would say. Socioeconomic status, pretty middle class.
Middle high class. Mm-hmm.
A lot of English speaking. We do have a lot of Hmong population in Wisconsin, our refugees from Laos and Thailand from the Vietnam War. But yeah, it's growing. But yes, I would say I was in a pretty homogeneous population.
Yeah, well, I just think what within you, you said I've got to do this. I'm going to take a risk. I mean, you could have stayed closed in and reserved. I know of people that, I mean, I travel, right? So I've met certain populations that are closed and they're proud to be closed. They don't want any inclusion at all. I mean, I can probably even talk from personal experience of some things, but it's tough. And how do you then develop a growth mindset and have enough grit and determination to say it might be tough emotionally, but I'm going to have some emotional grit to help me, some resilience, some resolve to face the norm and challenge myself so I can get outside of my comfort zone. Like, what was that process like for you?
I'll be 100% honest. I was so scared that my best friend flew me down to New Mexico. Like I was absolutely scared to start that journey. But she knew I needed to do that. And she had the time to be able to say, I'm going to get on the plane. I'm going to come down with you. I'm going to stay for, a little while just so you feel settled. And then I'm going to take off and you're going to stay and finish this.
Wow.
And I think, why did I get down there in the first place? My college professor, he's the one who mentored me and said, let's find a place you need to go, you need to explore. And so I think it goes back to that first message of grittiness. Being gritty does not mean independent on your own, right? Being
Right.
gritty means you're going to find the strength, the resilience, the perseverance to do it, and you're going to accept and welcome the beautiful gift others will give you of their time, their talents, their encouragement, and their guidance and wisdom, and following that and being open to that. To me, that's part of my gritty journey.
Wow. And I want to talk a little bit more. This is so impressive. I want to talk a little bit more about social justice
Yeah.
and how it's impacted your work with relationship building with students, in
Mm-hmm.
particular students maybe of diverse, marginalized BIPOC communities
Yes.
that are facing trauma and different social injustices that
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately they do exist. How has your work helped to assist these students? Like, what were you able to do on the ground in
Yeah.
this work, if anything, or if it was just research? Like, what were you able to do personally that you were like, I know I made a change here?
Yeah. Well, I think when you talk about making a change, to me, like when you start talking, just a flood of stories and a flood of pictures and images of some of my sixth graders just came through.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm going to talk about one girl who makes me smile because her smile lights up a room, absolutely lights up a room. This is a girl, African American female, who we will call her D. We'll just call her D. Okay. So D came to me and I started working with her. One thing we do in project based learning specific to my school, we have projects we all do collectively, but then we have students create personal projects. They choose a passion of their own, something they want to do. We help as advisors, right? We advise and we guide them on their path. And along that path, we help find the math, the English, the social studies, the science, the arts, right? We help them find those and find meaningful, authentic connections. So D wanted to loves dance, all types of dance, and she said she wanted to create a dance studio. So she wanted to like build her own dance studio that was a combination dance studio and teen hangout center. Awesome, right? Like this was her personal project she wanted to create. And as we were doing it, we were working through all the math, so much math in that project, right? Having to think about, well, how big is a dance floor? Sixth grade, right? What is the area? How can we model that? Well, we need to put down specific type of wood for this dance floor. How much does that cost? What's the unit rate? And we're going through this really just at the design stage with her. We're using this cool app. I think it was called Roomel that can like lay things out, right? So she's doing it technology, we're doing it. And then I started talking to her about the math, and she said, well, I'm not good at math. And I said, well,
Yeah.
honey, like you're doing this and that. Look at when you're doing this design, you're laying this out, you're thinking of these angles, you're coming up with these prices. And she said, well, I'm good at project math. That's different. That's not school math.
Oh, wow.
And in her head, she like articulated to me how I took that is she articulated that there's two types of math for her. There's
Wow.
math that I would call school math, digging deeper. I think to her it was worksheets,
Yeah.
textbook questions,
I
right?
think it was traditional setting of,
Traditional
like you said,
setting.
teacher at the door, at the board, book in front of you. The
Right.
book has no cultural content, no
Exactly.
diverse authors, probably not one black author in the book. Shame on them,
Exactly.
right? And it's
Exactly.
like, how do you expect to teach kids that are African American if you don't have African American authors in the book? I
Right.
don't know. That's like a pet peeve of mine. Like, it makes no sense because
Right.
there's no cultural relevance. There's no way that you can understand that world completely unless you bring somebody of that world into that space. So I'm sure she probably had that frustration. I know me personally, I never saw a diverse author in any of my books growing up. None,
Absolutely.
none. That was
Absolutely.
unheard of. We didn't occupy that space,
Right.
right?
So
And so
here's this
yeah,
11, 12-year-old girl basically naming the fact that there's different math for her. And she said, well, I'm good at school at project math.
yeah,
And project math to her was the math that she was passionate about, this math of her dance studio, this math where it didn't really, I'm not going to say the answer doesn't matter, but more important was the process. Like, well, how are you thinking of this? Oh, okay. Well, here, now we'll just use a calculator because guess what? In the real world, that's what we actually do. I'm not going to make you
yeah,
do long, multiplication of decimals to the hundredth and thousandth. At this point, you understand what to
yeah,
do. Let's now use the calculator, but you're going to explain your process to me. And you eventually are going to present this, right? Their personal projects get presented. And so
mhm,
they're in the room. There's, family members coming in, friends, other classmates, community members. She, of course, invited her dance teacher, and she had to be ready to explain all of that.
mhm,
What an incredible way to just share the power, right? The beauty of math, the beauty of this girl, again, whose smile, whose, personality takes over the room.
yeah.
Absolutely, right? Like,
So
so when you talk about social justice and how that maybe her project wasn't solving a social justice issue, to me, dance in a teen center, wow,
yeah,
right? Like,
powerful.
it could be an incredible
The
solution.
creativity,
The
right?
creativity,
And
right?
the thing is,
So
she felt comfortable with you enough to dream and to imagine, and you helped her win.
but
And that's what kids need today, right?
absolutely. And I think the power, India, is that we renamed ourselves advisors, not teachers, right? And
Mm.
so we said our role is to guide. Our role is to sit
Yes.
alongside of you, to dream with you, to create with you, to guide you, to
Uh,
maybe impart some wisdom along the way because I've experienced
yeah.
things. But I don't know everything. I don't know what this teen dance center looks like. You tell me, and then let me help you take the next step. Then you take
Wow.
the next 3, 4, 5 steps. And when you start to stumble, come back to me and I will help you find your path again. It's a very different mindset than I'm in charge. I'm
Yes, I'm a
leading.
teacher.
I'm the
And
teacher.
and the thing that the pet peeve, I think we're setting some teachers up for failure because we give them this false sense of power by
Mhm.
saying, I am the teacher, I have access to referrals and to suspensions, and if I don't get my way, the way I throw a temper tantrum is through a referral or through suspending you. And
Yeah.
it's over the wildest things. The kid threw a pencil on the floor, the kid threw water paper and it didn't make the trash can. The kid came
Yeah.
in late. Like,
Right.
really? We have to get a life as
Mhm.
teachers and
Right.
be willing to help students win and advocate for them and be an advisor, like you said. I think when I
Yeah.
think of the mindset of I'm an advisor, it's positive. It's like,
Yes.
you can't go wrong with me
Yes.
because I'm advising you. You have
I'm
to win
advising you.
with me. If I
Right.
did my job, you must win. But if I'm a teacher, it's more of I'm all about authority, being
Right.
respected, respecting my European cultural norms,
Mhm.
because teacher status in United States is not about respecting all cultures at times. The predominant culture is European, and the
Yep.
predominant traditional settings comes from a European way of thinking and way of life. Doesn't
Mhm.
mean it's wrong. I think the part that's wrong is when it's targeted through bias, which leads to school to prison pipeline. But what I'm saying is it's it it is not inclusive enough for all diverse, marginalized students. And we'll talk more about this in our session at
Well,
NCS because you
and
see I'm
it
very
just
passionate about this.
I know. And I think here we'll do a little teaser when we talk about those equitable practices. You had highlighted, and what you're highlighting now is the fact that so much of our teaching force is white, female. Like hello, I am the teaching force,
Yes,
and I
right.
recognize that. And again, part of my social justice journey was to really recognize who I am and the power and the positionality I have. But then how do I break that? Well, I can't
Yeah,
become a not white, not female person right now, right?
right.
That is
And
quite
it's not your fault. Just like it's
no,
not my fault that
but
I showed up in my, mocha chocolate skin, right? That's not my fault.
right.
And so
But
when we right,
what
go
can we do? That's what you and I are talking about. What
yeah,
can teachers do? And the beautiful part of project-based learning that we talked about, one of our equitable practices, how can I bring in then diverse speakers who could come in and speak to my math class about how they use math in their world? Who could I bring in for D? Right? We could have her instructor, her dance teacher, come in, whoever that is, and bring her in and say, "Hey, talk to us about dance. How did you get involved? How do you have math in your world? How do you do this? Why is it important to you? Hey, can you come back? Because Dee's eventually going to share out. Could you come back and give her feedback so she has this real, authentic person who she looks up to, who's a prominent member in our society,
yeah,
right?" And then
mentor.
we start seeing, oh, and I should say her instructor is an African American female, right?
Wow.
So,
Look at the
yes,
representation
right.
there.
So, like, we
And
can
maybe
bring
that's
in
another
that
reason why she's
representation.
interested.
Right. Right. We can bring in that representation. We can not just invite them in to be a speaker, but then again, hey, give feedback to this person. Hey, can you listen and be a cheerleader for them? Right.
Yeah,
They can have so much power. So that's one thing, again, as we talk about social justice journey, as you and I talk equitable practices. Yes, I'm white. Yes, I'm female. I can bring in an amazing array, though, of diverse people. We've had actually, he just competed in the Paralympics. We've had someone
oh, I
who, is in a wheelchair, had an accident, a boating accident, and was
oh, wow.
paralyzed. Right. So you can bring in speakers again. We talked earlier, you said not just racial,
Right.
right? So let's bring in all different diversities. Who
Yeah,
can we bring in who represents this beautiful cross section of our population and invite them to talk with our students, share their expertise, but then also empower our students to share their expertise and get feedback, so we grow the mentorship pool of our children.
right. This makes me think of I've had some tormenting moments of student to teacher interaction in two counties. One state, not to blast them, but Rhode Island. I had a very tragic experience when I was trying to support, the leadership there.
Yeah.
And I remember being at a school, and the student was sent outside of the classroom, and the student was an African American boy. He's about third grade,
Mhm, mhm,
and he was like neglected, abandoned, left. The substitute was not checking on the student. The substitute was an older Caucasian male.
mhm,
And I remember he's probably like 70, 80. And I remembered walking to the student with one of the leaders of the district. And I said, "What's wrong? Like, what's going on?" And the kid said, "I was just laughing with my friends and we were trying to play with the toy." And he yelled at me harshly and told
mhm,
me, just sent me out, told me to go, and told me I was in trouble. And the boy was physically like shaking.
mhm,
And it just was very tormenting because I saw that this child did not have the support that it needed. There was another county, Hernando County, which I went to help and do some work once. And I remembered it was not good. There was a theme of, how the students line up for recess or
mhm.
whatever. You have
For
the
sure.
different
Yep.
roles that are assigned and all this. Well, this class really didn't have roles assigned,
Oh.
but for some reason there was a norm established that Black students were the back of the line. And it was so interesting because when one student went, African American student, he went to go a little bit further. I mean, the students like yelled at him, like they all ganged up on this boy. "You belong in the back. You need to." And I'm like, this here, what are we establishing as norms? in
Right.
our classrooms.
Right.
And can we be a cheerleader for our students? I think it's a heart issue. So talk to me
Yeah.
about how can we help teachers to overcome these subtle things that might creep into our hearts,
Mhm.
maybe things of discomfort or maybe even some biases or some
Yeah.
expectations of, oh, if they're, this descent or this linguistic background, they get lower. They get a lower
Mhm.
grade. They get the short end of the stick. They don't get my 100%. I don't check up with those families. I don't try to even get to know their community, right? How can we help teachers to reevaluate? It's
Yeah. Well, I mean, first, I want to acknowledge one, how hard it must be for you when you walk into these places, when you are there to grow the equitable practices, the grit of all the educators, and you see these tough things. I also want to acknowledge for all those amazing teachers that are in Rhode Island, for all those amazing teachers
yes,
that are in whatever county, like we see you
yes,
too. And how often I'm going to use your story as the how often those negatives center in our mind. And you ask, like, how do we help teachers? Um, I think unfortunately biases, stereotypes start because of one bad interaction, right?
yeah,
Like one bad blank, whether that was an interaction with a student, a community member on a plane, even watching it on TV. Our media has, oh, like,
yeah,
let's not even go there. Um, but
right,
that one interaction, that one negative can center with us and stay lodged so deep in our brain that I think the first step we need to take always, always, always is looking at each child, each human being with fresh eyes, right? Like,
right,
who are you? What are you bringing to me today? Yes, 3 weeks ago, you had a tantrum. I had a boy, sixth grade boy once, literally on the floor, would not get up because another girl had his green pencil and he wanted it back. Now,
wow,
there was a lot other things going on, and I had to basically take this other girl, give her 2 pencils for the 1 green pencil to get that green pencil
yeah,
back. That was a rough day for that boy. 3
wow.
weeks later, though, I can't hold that interaction in my head and my heart. I have to say, "That's where you were at on that day. I care for
That's
you."
what,
And guess what? Today's a fresh day. Today's a fresh hour. Today is a fresh minute with you. Where are you today emotionally, in your heart, in your, regulation? And how can I take you one more step forward? Whether that is a baby step or a giant leap,
wow,
right? Often it's those baby steps.
yeah,
So for me, it's looking at each person as a new child. I think you say, you've said this in our conversations before, like, view that as your own child. That is someone's child. That is someone's baby. That is someone's, best girl, best boy, best, them, like, best ever. Like, that is someone's world.
yes,
You have the amazing privilege of holding 24 people's worlds in your classroom
yes,
at one
we do.
time, right? Like,
Yes,
the immense power you have by being the adult in the room. How do you use that power for good, right? And how do you say, you know what, it's not my power to hold exclusively, it's our power. We are a community of learners. You talk about the norms, I call them community agreements. Can we agree to act with one another today? Right? Let's bring that respect forward. Let's bring that all voices are heard and welcomed.
you know,
Right?
and I want to say something. I think this is great, but I think there's another level to this. And
Good. Go
I
deeper.
want to now talk about social justice in action in
Yes.
regards to education and leaders, teachers, principals, whatever. There are so there's a huge disparity among the demographic makeup of teachers. In particular, in America, we know it's predominantly Caucasian female, right?
Right.
You cannot fault that. Like you can't fault that there are many Caucasian females that get into this profession and they're doing great. You have to support that.
Mm-hmm.
But in my travels and in my research and in experience, there has been a social gap. I think there's a fear, and we're having a session, Black Women in Math, where we're going to talk about how to teach and think and teach like a Black woman. I'm really excited about it because it's going to give people the opportunity to put themselves in our shoes and to see that instead of a referral, it can be this, or instead of this, it could be that, or I don't know the family, so this is how I would approach it as a Black woman. Off of that, how do we help Caucasian females who some might have fear of the unknown?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have to teach all these African American kids, Hispanic
Right.
kids, kids of just uh, diverse situations going on, and I don't
Right.
know, I don't even know their culture. Some can say I've never had a Black person at my house.
Right.
I've never had a Spanish person at my house. I've never been to a Black person's house or Spanish person's house. I've never
Right.
been, just I've just never had that. What advice do you have them for them? How can they break out of that fear so that they
Yeah.
can be a support for these people?
Yeah. Um, Lots of different ideas. I think one of the ideas, and again, I don't want to give too much away from our equity talk, right?
Right.
But I think the first step, these students are coming to us from different neighborhoods. Get
Right.
into the neighborhood, go visit, right, the local grocery store or the local
Right.
convenience store, go visit, right, patron, go spend
Mhm.
money, check out the whatever, local
Community
coffee
events, the
shop,
churches,
right? Like
the
the
libraries.
churches, the libraries, absolutely. Go to the cafe, get food, ask about it. Um,
Right.
but then I know that can be intimidating, but what I
Mhm.
try to talk to my, students, as you said, I'm working with, pre-service teachers, helping them grow and be ready. I think the big thing is you're going to be with the students, they're who you they look up to you. You need to look to them though, right? Hey, I
Yeah.
saw you at recess playing a game. You're playing double dutch and singing a little song. Like, can you teach me that song? Empower even the smallest kids to teach you their games. To me, games are so powerful, right? So like learn the games that the students play. What about stories? What are the stories your students are reading? Ask them, like, hey, can you bring in, are you you know do you are you reading books at home with your family? What are you reading? What movies are you watching? What songs are you listening to? What TikTok star are you into? Right, whatever it is, and start
Wow.
that communication, because I think sometimes the fear is I'm going to be the only white person in that church. Okay, if you're not ready for that step, you're maybe the only white person in the classroom, but you're not afraid of your students. So sit and talk to your students. And naturally, I've seen it happen 100 times. The kid's going to ask you, hey, come to my blank,
They
right?
will.
Come to my gymnastics meet. Come to my church. I'm going to be singing in the choir, right?
Yeah.
Come to blank. That's your invitation in. Or if
Yes.
they say, hey, I'm singing in church on Sunday, say, hey, could I come listen? If I came, could I sit kind of by you or your family? Would you help me? That vulnerability is hard, but it is going to go miles and miles and miles when you talk to the families, right?
And you
And
have to be gritty about it. You have to really have an interest. Like what you're saying to me is can be said in one word, one sentence. You have to become truly interested in the whole child.
whole
Like
child.
the whole child. And I think what happens is sometimes students come to us, sometimes a little bit unkempt, right? Sometimes they're dealing with situations of homelessness, poverty. Right now, we have over 1 million kids that are homeless in the United States under the age of 18. So, it's like they're coming to us with these, just humble beginnings and modest situations.
Right.
When I was growing up, I'm so thankful for my teacher, Miss Nikki, who, when I was growing up, she told me, India, you aren't always, well Kent. Like you had very modest situation. Um, and you were very reserved because you were going through abuse and you had a lot going on. And she was able to love me through that. And she was so cute. She's this blonde cheerleader. She's gorgeous. But she was fun and she opened her world to me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, oh, I'm going to help you because I'm just collecting a paycheck. Like she really was interested in me. Like she really invested in. And I think that's what we as teachers have to do is look beyond that situation, realize that student, they're not paying their bills. They're not buying their clothes.
Right.
They're not feeding themselves. They
Right.
were trusted to do that with parents or guardians. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. But why should we judge a child or put them through so much because they have a more humble situation than the child that has both parents at home and they're in middle high class, living in the suburbs, doing great,
Right.
got college paid for by fourth grade? Why should we put these children who they're all innocent in these different, it's almost like an American caste system of, well, you have the haves and the have not.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we have to be willing to change and break out of that so that
Yeah.
we can be more effective in education,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, we're looking at the whole child. We're recognizing though that that child really is still someone's world,
Yeah,
right? And your job, and I believe teaching is so much more than a job. It's a calling,
it is.
right? It's absolutely a calling. Your gift, right? It is a gift
Mhm.
to give. No, we are not in it for the money, right?
Right,
We are in it for that's that cheesy saying, we're not in it for the income, we're in it for the outcome. Uh,
right,
but our goal then is to just love that child for the time that we have with them. Because we never know, right? We never know. I've had students come back saying, "Hey, Dr. McHugh, do you remember that day you were so upset about blah, 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 blah?" And I'll say, "I don't remember that day. You were so upset at me for this, this, and this." I said, "I don't remember that day. I remember
right.
the day and I'll fill in the blank." I just had a
Wow.
student come back who's a junior in college, and he said, "Hey, do you remember blah, blah, blah?" I said, "No." He goes, "Well, do you remember the day you and I were playing Jenga and it was this ultimate game and you let me go 5 minutes late to class because the Jenga still hadn't fallen?" I said, "Oh, I remember that day. I remember how much fun because it was the best Jenga game I've ever played for real, India. This is the
Wow.
stupidest, maybe cheesiest thing I've done as a teacher. I literally gave a kid a late pass for 5 minutes so we could finish our Jenga game." Like, but he remembered that, right? Like,
Amazing.
he was a junior in college and this was sixth grade, and he remembered me letting him go 5 minutes late. Do you know what happened in his next class? None of us are ever going to know or remember that class, but we remember
Right.
Linda, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
silly, but those are the moments I remember with students. I don't remember, yeah, as a teacher, have I been upset with my students? Sure. I don't hold on to those though, right? I hold on to
Right.
all the beautiful things
And
and that.
then when you're upset, it's how you communicate and what you're saying. If you
Right.
don't, so teachers have to understand, and we'll talk about this in our session, but there's a way to communicate without degrading and dehumanizing someone.
Yes.
And that's what unfortunately I think some students have encountered
Yeah.
is when a teacher's upset, it's demoralizing, it's
Right.
dehumanizing, like it's like a personal attack. Like they start going after that student and the
Right.
makeup of that student, the socioeconomic status. They start saying these abusive, cynical things to these students that leave dampers on them. Like I remember, I tell you all the story of my calculus teacher who I haven't seen him, not my professors at UF. They were great. I'm talking about my high school teacher who, he told me I was stupid to my face, told me I would never understand calculus. I would never major in math. Why don't you go do something that you and your people can do? And they paid this man and he
Right.
retired,
Right.
and it's like, bro, what did I do to you? I just came to you for a math problem. So why are students being um, exposed to this, and how can we provide answers so that they can become truly invested? Like I love your example of Jenga because it's something like you're just intentionally interested, and I don't think that just comes natural for some people. Some people they fake it till they make it.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
do they get out of that? How do they get out of that rut?
You know, I always tell educators you have to be so absolutely in love with who you are that your passions excite the kids, right? Like
Yes.
I will be good. You and I have played games, right? Remember
Yes.
CMC? We were in there playing that game, right? Like we're intent. Like I love playing games with kids because I think it often levels the playing field and they see me just as human and silly and having fun with them. I played so many like more like chess and cribbage and stuff, but like Jenga, right?
Yeah.
I've even played, ready, and my colleagues will back me up on this. I have played hide and go seek in the dark in the basement with kids. Like because they're middle schoolers and they still want to play, and that's
Yes, they
beautiful.
do.
But
You know, that's
but
right.
I tell my pre-service teachers, what are you absolutely into? I had a student teacher, she played lacrosse, the game, right?
Right.
And so she brought in one day all of her equipment, had kids out there practicing, trying, right? And she would like lighten it. She'd put pictures up. One time she came in and had her like lacrosse helmet on. And it was this whole thing. She kicked off on the idea of safety. Like I said, you own that. Right?
Yeah.
Own that that's a passion of yours. I'm not saying the kids have to all become lacrosse players, but you own that passion to the point where kids get interested in it. And then you can start making those relationships. Well, okay, I'm into lacrosse, but what are you into? Dude, you're into skateboarding? Tell me about that. I want to know more. I don't think I could do that. Right? How did you learn skateboarding? Oh, you spend hours and hours and hours practicing? Okay, well, today in math, we have this skill and we're just going to spend some time practicing. Hey, but don't worry. Just like when you get to go do skateboarding at the cool park and do all the tricks, we're going to use this to do something really cool. Right?
Wow.
Like that's how you can link that, right? If you're really into, I have a colleague who is super into like games, like, but not like me, like Comic-Con and like
Yeah.
Settlers Catan and stuff. Like he's into all the crazy cool like card games and board games and stuff, and that's his passion that he brings so much that he sends like he has a whole class for freshmen about playing games. Like
Oh,
you own it. Like,
wow.
whatever you're into, you own that, and you use that as a way to like be truly who you are, but then recognize that you have kids who are just truly themselves,
Right.
And how can you bring whoever they are? They're really into writing fan fiction. Cool. Let's do a fan fiction project, right?
Wow.
Hey, they're really into gosh, I have a kid who's really into bugs. Cool. Let's help him do a project all about bugs. Not my thing, but man, that kid, he is going to be, what are they like? Entomologists or something? I don't even know what it is, but he's going to be it.
Yeah.
I tell
Yes.
you, I
Yes.
know that kid and he's going to be it, And
Wow. That
um,
is
so
beautiful.
yeah,
So
I think just be you, right?
yeah,
And own that.
and it's learning to be you without apology.
Yes.
When we show up in this world, we have to stop apologizing for
Mhm.
who we are, for
Right.
how we were made, for the talents that we bring, for standing out. I just think that when you're really trying to find your purpose, you're not going to fit in. And people that realize that they will they'll champion your voice and they'll help you. Like I know, for instance, I think of Nike, right?
Yeah.
Uh, the shoe company Nike, and I think of Adidas and all these. Go to their website and see the diversity. See the people that they have selected that stand out.
Right.
People that they look totally different. They're rocking their own vibe. They have
Hmm.
not apologized. Like Shakari Richardson, for example.
Yes.
Wow, what an athlete. But when she first came in, it was not easy. And there were many critics. Oh, this girl that, look at her nails, look at the way she looks, da da da. She got caught up in stuff, whatever. And it was like all this mud around her name. But look, now she's like the second fastest woman in the world, if not the fastest. And now she's, I think, doing work with ESPN. Kudos to her. And one thing I love about her, she was gritty and she did not apologize for who she was. She did not back down from her true identity. And now it's landed her in one of the most prominent seats in the sports world
Right.
because she refused to be muted by people who were uncomfortable with who she was as a person. And so we have to learn uh,
Hmm.
to embrace ourselves and to also help teachers to embrace students that show up different and to not, feel some type of way because they don't blend in.
But then to intentionally make space for for all students to bring that to the center, to bring that
Exactly.
to the forefront. I mean, I think back, and this is the silliest, cheesiest thing, but what did we do in kindergarten? We did show and tell.
We
Where's
did.
the show and tell in middle school? Where's the show and tell in
Oh,
high school?
wow.
Right? Like, show and tell is one of those beautiful routines where every kid gets to bring themselves and be important for that 5 or 10 or whatever minutes where they are the stage, they're the expert, right? Like,
Right.
what is the show and tell of middle school? I don't know. What is the show and tell in high school? For me, project-based learning allows that show and tell to happen,
Yes, it
right?
does. Yep.
Where students get to shine. Like, hey, I love speaking. I'm going to be the presenter. Hey, I really like making movies. I want to be like into film, and so I'm going to make the video of all of you doing this, this, and this, and I'm going to be behind the scenes, but super important to the success of this project.
Yes, I
You
love
know,
it.
right? Like, you talked about roles earlier. Where are the roles? How do roles help establish us as a community? How do roles help all students feel, not all students feel important? How do roles ensure all students are important in the classroom,
Yes,
right?
that
Like,
there's not a respecter of persons. That is my pet peeve. I
right,
can't stand people that have respecter of persons, that they just cater to certain culture, certain linguistic, like it's suppressive, it's abuse,
right,
because we're simply saying because you look different or because you speak different, whatever, you know, it's short end of the stick for you, and there's
right,
nothing to do to change my fixed mindset, because that's just how it is, and I
right,
think people lose in life. People lose, they lose the richness of what the world could be, of what talent could be. They throw away kids that could have really shined and made a difference, in their lives. And
right,
I think that, we have to start thinking of how can we cultivate, you know, more resiliency in students and more passion and more grit,
right.
through these project-based learning activities, so that these students could really shine completely in their element. So with that said, what advice do you have, Dr. Maggie, for teachers, beginning teachers, veteran teachers, that they want to pursue PBL, but maybe they don't have enough grit, or maybe they don't know how to cultivate grit in students through this work?
Yeah,
What advice do you
yeah.
have for
I always say start small, right? Like, it takes a long time to overhaul anything. So start small. You don't necessarily have to start with an entirely like month-long project to get going in project-based learning. In my book, I talk about things like a performance task. Maybe instead of, with Dee making her own dance studio, teen center, etc., maybe a performance task could have just been like, hey, I'm giving you the outline of this box. You need to now create, whatever you want. If you were the architect, right? If you were the architect of this space, what would you design in here? Go ahead. Today is design day. And then tomorrow we're going to talk about, unit rates, and we're going to explore the different flooring that you need because of your space. And then on day 3, you're going to present out your design, right? Just even something small where students get to have voice and choice in what they want to do. There's still intentional learning. It shouldn't be fluff. You know what I mean? Like, we need to still have
right?
academics, and then students have a voice in like actually verbally explaining it. Now, verbally explaining it doesn't have to be live. I've had students pre-record their own, right,
Oh, wow.
voices. I've had students like use like their iPads or any digital piece technology to like
That's equitable
draw
practices,
and
right?
talk. You could also have students present all or part of it in their home language,
Yeah,
and in
I think
some
it's
else,
beautiful. Make
right?
space.
Right, make space for that.
Yeah.
So, and you don't have to have every student present even in front of the whole class. Sometimes students are really shy, and I say, okay, you're going to come present to me, and you get to pick one other person to be in the room. Try to at least open up that from just one-on-one to maybe two-on-one, right?
Yeah.
And then the next time you practice presenting, maybe you ask that student, okay, you get to pick one person, I get to pick one other student to be in here who I think will be a really good audience member. And then we just get, oh my gosh, all of a sudden you're speaking to 2 people, right?
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
teacher.
Mhm.
So that is one small way to elevate authenticity to elevate student choice and voice in the classroom that doesn't have to be a whole project, but definitely takes us in the right step, baby steps. We do baby steps with our students. We can do baby steps with ourselves as teachers.
Right. I think that's beautiful. And thank you for that advice and leaving that nugget. I hope that teachers are able to really walk away with this with a clear understanding. And for those that'll see us at NCSM, tell them a little bit about, our session time and things where they can find us as we wrap
Absolutely.
up the podcast. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so we are on Wednesday of next week at NCSM. I believe the date is the 25th. We will be at 1:15 for NCSM, implementing equitable math practices through project-based learning. So we can't wait to see you all, hang out with us for an hour, get resources, and really it's a start
Yes,
of
we
a
have.
conversation.
Yes, we have resources for you. Possibly, we
Yes.
even have door prizes. So you want to come check
What?
us out.
Woo-hoo!
A lot of sessions. So again, Dr. Maggie already told y'all it's going to be Wednesday, September 25th at 1:15 p.m. Come check us out. The first come, first serve with door prizes and different things like that. But we'll have resources and handouts throughout. So I can't wait to do this with you, Dr. Maggie. We're going to rock it. It's going to be a great time. And thank you so much for coming on the Let's Get Gritty podcast. Now, how can we reach you for those they're like, hey, I want to email you, maybe buy your book or maybe ask you to come and present or, just pick your brain. How can we reach you?
Absolutely. So many ways, and it all is just my whole name, Maggie Lee, Lee, McHugh. So Maggie Lee McHugh at gmail.com for email, at Maggie Lee McHugh on Facebook, on Twitter. Those are my two main. I'm maybe going to start dabbling in the Instagram world. And so Maggie Lee McHugh, you can find me. I would be happy to talk, chat, and celebrate you wherever you're at on your journey.
Love it. Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you, India.
So guys, thanks so much for joining us again on the Let's Get Gritty podcast with yours truly, Dr. India White. And with that said, guys, thank you so much. I am going to wrap it up now. I'm not really going to go over my announcements. We will see you guys at NCTM. We will see you at NCSM. And until next time, stay gritty.
Stay gritty.